Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the last panel discussion on equitable education in this conference. And I'm very much excited for it and been looking forward for it, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the session that we will be talking about the standards of education. So we'll be discussing on how to track the progress and at the same time to identify the areas for improvement in both teaching and learning. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the programs manager at VVOB, Ms. Carolina Rukowska. Welcome to the stage.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. The last session, it's here. So this afternoon, first of all, let me invite our two experts and panelists onto the stage as well here with me. Dr. Bagus Santoso. And Mr. Alejandro Ibanez. Please welcome. So my name is Carolina Rutkowska. I'm the country programs manager for VVOB in Vietnam. And it is my honor to be your moderator for this final session today. Before we kick off this panel discussion on quality assurance, monitoring and evaluation, research and learning for quality outcomes in education, I would like to share with you why I am excited about this session. So VVOB is an international nonprofit organization, and we specialize in bringing education innovations to the system level. And we do that in close collaboration with the ministries of education. In Southeast Asia, we have two offices in Cambodia and Vietnam, and we've been working closely with the ministries for over 20 years now, working specifically on pedagogical school leadership, strengthening pedagogical school leadership, and quality 21st century teaching. And of course, as a nonprofit organization working closely with the government, with the ministries of education, it is really essential that you do this following a scaling pathway, a scaling strategy. And that scaling strategy is focused for a great deal on evidence. Starting from evidence, having innovations that start from evidence, but then also investing in evidence generation along the way. That is the only way to be able to work at a systems level with ministries of education to impactfully create change and transform the education system. So that is why, looking at this topic of this session today, it is really close to heart for me. And it's very nice to be here with like-minded people who love talking about data, insights, and analysis. So you already know the format. In this 90-minute session, we will have 3 speakers. 2 speakers are here with us in person. We will have one pre-recorded video of our third speaker, which is Mr. Koji Miyamoto. And after our presentations, we will go into the Q&A to have a lively discussion on this rich topic. So without further ado, I would like to start off with Dr. Bagus Santoso. He's the founder of Definite Asia, and he will be sharing with us some insights on evaluation systems for large-scale training programs. And more specifically, he will dive into the Prakerja program in Indonesia. Now, if you're hearing Prakerja mentioned for the first time, then either you were not here with us yesterday, or you were, but you dozed off. So it's exciting to hear a different side on the Prakerja program, looking into an external assessment that was done. Please, the floor is yours.
Right, okay. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Karuna Rutkowska, for your kind introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Bagus Santoso. So I guess I need to introduce a bit of Definite. Definite is one of the prominent think tank in Indonesia. It is under 14 years of existence of the Definite. The existence of the Definite is actually wide range of areas that including program evaluation, financial inclusion and literacy, microfinance, MSc, regional economics, public policies mainly, economic modeling, also access to finance for disabilities. So we work with various partners, mainly with international organizations such as Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, ILO, USAID, Willis Tower and Watson, and others. We also collaborate with top national bodies institutions in Indonesia. Recently, we collaborate with Prakerja, the one that has been mentioned from yesterday. We also work closely with Minister of Finance, Financial Service Authority, the Central Bank of Indonesia, the deposit insurance, and other institutions. Now back to the our main topic. I need to back. Okay, now I need to return back to the title of the presentation because today is on the quality assurance. So I'll use Kartu Prakerja as my examples. I guess this is all the files, maybe. So in here, let me see. Okay. The outline of my presentation is 5 things only. Can short training change someone's life? On the Kartu Prakerja itself, on scaling innovation for nationwide impact, and turning data into transformation, quality assurance in actions, beyond training, how Kartu Prakerja connects skill to job, and last, building for the future, a call to transform large-scale training program. So now, start from the first topic, can short training change someone's life? The late Mr. Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And to answer this question on the can short training change someone's life of ordinary people that reflect the majority of Indonesian people, I'll share 3 stories only from Indonesian case study, how short training can change someone's life. So first, meet Derry. Derry was a street electrician. So initially he was struggled to find permanent job due to lack of adequate skill on the electrical installations. And also he didn't have the legal certification for this skill. Then he joined Prakerja training, short training Prakerja on the electrical installation and digital marketing. Those short training inspire him to motivate him to learn more skills. After completing this training, he successfully obtained his certification and developed his electrical business by leveraging Google Ads in social media. He even then obtained certification on the rare subject, refrigeration and air conditioning engineering. And he even got level 5 of this certification, quite high certifications. So the impact of this training, short training, is that this training make Derry enhance his electrical skill, and he can create job opportunities for the others, and he can empower others. Second example, let me Vita. Vita is again a common or reflecting most Indonesian fresh graduate who have challenge to finding a job during the COVID-19. Then she started her own business as makeup artist, and then She took training on the digital marketing, visual branding, and financial management. And then after taking this training, then her business is getting better. So before getting training, her client was 2 to 3 clients per month. And after that, she can manage to get 10 clients per day, especially in the graduation season. This success also boosted her motivation to pursue a postgraduate degree. Next, meet Omi. Omi is a person with disability, the subject of discussed from yesterday about disability. And then he sadly stopped his formal education after his 5th grade, that means primary school, due to peer pressure from his schoolmate regarding his physical conditions. Initially, he earned a living by creating video content that was uploaded to digital platform. Then she joined Prakerja training. He chose search engine optimizations. Impact of this training is that an increase in number of viewers engaging in this content. For Omi, training like this, short training like this that suit to him, help him that online registration and training offer him significant program advantage for people with disability like Omi. Those stories like Derry, Vita, and Omi raise a real and important question. How do we ensure that large-scale training program designed to help millions could truly deliver results? How we move beyond offering course to helping people like Derry, Vita, and Omi acquire real life-changing skills? The answer of this lies on how we evaluate and monitor this program. It is not enough to provide training. We must ensure that it leads to transformation. Therefore, I'd like to share this, particularly like has been mentioned, that use Prakerja as examples, because last year we were appointed to conduct assessment for this program. So what is Kartu Prakerja? I think has been mentioned from yesterday, so now becoming very familiar. Again, Kartu Prakerja is skill development program for Indonesian workforce. So objective for this program is mainly on the raising competency, productivity, competitiveness, and entrepreneurship. It is one of the most massive government to people G2P assistance program. It has helped labor force by offering large-scale, very efficient and effective training to that promise long life learning for all. The program started 2020. It aimed to it also has innovative blend of financial support and large-scale digital training technology. So what makes this Prakerja is so unique? I guess has been mentioned, but this again, we have to spell out what number they can make. From 2020 to 2024, so only 4 years span, Prakerja managed to train more than 18.9 million participants, a staggering number. It has more than 1,200 courses. It also has the course, again, because it's very diverse, from entrepreneurship, coding, cooking, automotive repairs, whatnot. Yeah, whatever the potential participant want, most of them is there. So it has leveraged technology in the entire process, from registration process, learning process, to training incentive. Yeah, it is cost-effective training with massive outreach. It can reach the unreachable. It can reach who live in remote areas. Remember that Indonesia have more than 270 million people. It has more than 13,000 islands where the transportation is not a luxury. So with this kind of training of Prakerja, this makes things impossible to be possible. This data convince us. There are so many data that Kartu Prakerja convince us that it can bring long life learning education to home. It is very close to home. Yeah, participants can even use their sarung, their t-shirt from home. They can take training. Yeah, this is the training that not the ordinary training. Yeah, but again, it also inclusive for all ages, genders. Ages mean above 18 to 64. Yeah, it also covers genders. It also friendly to disability as well as people experiencing poverty and those living in remote areas. Out of these 18.9 million training beneficiaries, 51% of them are women, 3% are with people with disabilities, 2% come from underdeveloped district, and 44% of participants come from 40% of the poorest income group. However, as it is a relatively new program, Prakerja has constantly received constructive feedback that the one we are discussing today since its early implementation. This include the need to provide more information on leading industries and the required skill, the need to ensure that the design and content training will meet the needed skill, the need for more regular evaluation of cooperation with the training providers and other private partnership to ensure the relevance of training material, the feedback that's helped the Kartu Prakerja program that significantly improved its iterative system. Next is the third topic on the how then turning data to transformation. We all know you cannot manage when things cannot be measured. That also applies here. You can improve if you can measure. So quality assurance and monitoring are the keys to unlocking better education. To improve learning outcome, we must continuously refine how we teach, how we train through feedback, monitoring, and quality assurance. So quality assurance in teaching and learning is a systematic process and practice designed to ensure that education standards are constantly met and maintained. Therefore, quality assurance should consider all critical dimensions of teaching and learning, that's including the input, the process, output, outcome, and impacts. I can discuss this longer, but we don't have much time. So, and the assessment aimed to optimize the value for money invested in education program. Kartu Prakerja is very efficient. It takes only less than 1% of the budget used for operating expenses. Very efficient compared to other training. So next, as continuous and comprehensive evaluation is a key success factor for the Kartu Prakerja program that include internal and external assessment. It is, I believe it is longer, older version of our presentation, but anyway, so the external assessment cover rigorous assessment, some of which are rapid assessment, that is like assessing process, user perception, and others. Yeah. Or also, good thing is that Prakerja can bring the central data statistic to also take the survey, put this on the some question to National Labor Force Survey to assess the Prakerja performance to the public. And then also there are user perception survey by external institutions like couple of institutions like CSIS, Pro Tracking, and other training providers. And also Prakerja also implement randomized control trial for the outcome and impact evaluation and other independent studies. And another, before that, another is that Prakerja also have done the internal evaluation, that including the internal evaluation survey the partners, that is include that once a year for training provider, marketplace, bank, fintech, and job portal. and also internal evaluation survey interest study for users. That another is that Prakerja also have reliable contact centers that giving access to public for seeking help, confirmation, or even raising complaint. Sorry. Yeah. And these are some example of independent research and studies that are done by Kartu Prakerja by a couple of external institutions like our institution, Definite. And this year, Prakerja also plan to carry out another external assessment. And here are some result of the studies. Yeah. Let us look at the user journey of the Kartu Prakerja beneficiaries. So study, okay, we have a couple of studies. The beneficiaries of Prakerja share positive impressions about the experience throughout the registration process, training attendance, and the training completion. For instance, study by the World Bank find that 78% beneficiary purchase Kartu Prakerja training with ease. 96% of them satisfied with the first training. Study by Definite confirmed that 80% considered the process of training purchase is easy. 71% found that Prakerja registration process is easy. 95% considered that 15 days period for selecting and purchasing the first training is sufficient. Another is that Definite also find that 90% of beneficiaries considered that competitiveness in finding job opportunity improve. Yeah. And 80% of them considered their skill, competence, and productivity also improve. So next is that a study by JPAL, that's very credible institution, find that Prakerja increased the likelihood of owning a business compared to non-beneficiaries by 30%. It also increased by 12% likelihood the benefit of being self-employed compared to non-beneficiaries. So remember this, that I have mentioned about numbers, about percentage, but please be kindly remember, this is not just numbers. Behind every percentage of number, yeah, we have to remember there are millions of people that were once excluded from job market, but now equipped with skill they need to compete. By running a program of this skill is not without its challenge. How do we ensure that quality when dealing with millions of learners, not only 1, 2, 3, 100, 200, but millions, each with different needs, different motivation, and learning styles. So this is the one that we discussed from yesterday, adaptability become the key. Adaptability is matter most when dealing with very large scale program. Every piece of feedback and every survey response fits into the system to improve the course offering, adapt its content, and identify the bottlenecks. It takes very long process, and there are also delegates from Prakerja here, so they can add more information about this. And therefore, Kartu Prakerja, I just want to stress out that Kartu Prakerja does not just collect data. It listens to it. It is not just a program. It is a living, breathing system that evolves within its learners, its beneficiary. So not only that, Prakerja also help labor force bridging the gap and connect between the skill and employment requirement. It has established partnerships with many job platforms like JobStreet, Top Career, that to ensuring that skilled participants acquire aligned with the job market demand. This is also supported by JPAL studies who find that when we compare to non-beneficiaries of Prakerja compared to beneficiaries, that beneficiaries are more likely to use training certificate to apply for job by 172%, get new job by 18%, and start new business by 30%. So What is the takeaway from all of this? So if we genuinely want to transform life to large scale, we must move beyond traditional education. We have discussed it from yesterday. We have to move from traditional education model. We need robust, adaptable evaluation system to ensure every learner journey is supported, measured, and continuously improved. An excellent training program should be able to listen, adapt, and deliver real outcome. From rural villages to urban centers, from cities to remote areas. This program has shown that the right system in place, training can lead to transformation. Now, I'll leave you just a few minutes, 1 minute left. I know I leave you with this challenge, how we can apply these lessons from Prakerja to our context, how we can build programs that don't just promise education, but deliver real, tangible outcome. These are the questions to all of us. I'd like to discuss that more. I shall leave you to answer this challenge, and I would end my presentation by highlighting last note that because the future of education is not about delivering content only, it's about delivering result. And when we do that, we won't just be teaching, we'll change the life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santoso. Ties in nicely with the session that we had this morning as well, talking about delivering results and not just content for trainings. You left us with a good reminder, I would say. Training without integrated monitoring and feedback and a listening ear to those who are receiving the training or following the training is unlikely to lead to true transformation, as you say. And it's also really nice to see how you visualized the fact that quality assurance is really a trajectory from input to impact. It does not just come in at the end or somewhere in the middle ad hoc. It is really something that needs to be designed from the early beginnings. It needs to be robust and it needs to be continuous. So I think that's a nice takeaway from this session. Next, we move on to Mr. Alejandro Ibanez, Program Manager with CIMEO Secretariat, specifically working on the Southeast Asia primary learning metrics. So what we'll be doing is moving from a specific case study, looking into a robust evaluation system, now expanding our scope to hear more about large-scale skills assessments at a regional level. So Mr. Ibanez will talk about monitoring and developing the ASEAN basic education system. Please, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Carolina, for that introduction. My name is Alejandro Ibanez. I am from the CPLM Regional Secretariat at the CIMEO Secretariat here in Bangkok, Thailand. And I'm going to give a little bit of introduction first before I start with the topic in this panel. So I come from the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, or CIMEO. It's an intergovernmental organization working with 11 CIMEO member countries in the region, established in 1965, and we work with ministries of education and different government agencies to promote regional cooperation on education, science, and culture. Currently, CIMEO has 26 regional centers spread out throughout Southeast Asia that has specific focus and key specific thematic areas, working on to promote knowledge sharing and facilitate education opportunities to people from early childhood to lifelong learning. And so at CIMEO, one of our objectives is really to promote regional collaboration in order to advance education quality in Southeast Asia. And so it's my pleasure to contribute into this panel our experience from the CPLM program. learning from Mr. Bagos, speaking about evaluating training programs at a country level. Here at CMEO, one of our flagship programs is called Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics. And what we do is to look at systems outcomes and how effective systems in terms of delivering results, not only to education stakeholders such as schools, and other stakeholders, but actually looking at learning and whether children are actually getting the necessary skills in order for them to contribute meaningfully to the broader society and community. And so that's where I'm coming from for this presentation, is to present to you an overview of the basic education system in Southeast Asia, the state of where we are right now, looking at the pre and the post-pandemic context, and also looking at existing evidence and highlighting equity issues that matter, not only matter to children, but also matter to our governments, to policymakers in terms of shaping strong policy responses. And finally, towards the end of my presentation, from our experience, we're also going to give you a glimpse of our policy recommendations in order to address key challenges experienced not just by one country, but experienced by majority of countries in Southeast Asia. So I'm going to start off this presentation by giving you a glimpse of the state of learning recovery globally. And this is coming from a report from World Bank in 2023, where they looked at different education systems all around the world. And based on their assessment, only 1 in 5 countries had an explicit and comprehensive strategy and plan to recover and accelerate learning after reopening. In fact, there's less than a third of countries globally implemented policy measures that were deemed cost effective. And if we look at and if we situate that particular finding into share of low performing achievers in Southeast Asia, we saw that if we look at drawing in from different evidences, from different sources, we can see that there's a huge variation of learning in terms of set of children acquiring the necessary skills or looking at foundational skills of literacy and numeracy. So if you have here, for example, at the end of basic education, so looking at performances of grade 5 and grade 6, you can see that in Southeast Asia, there is huge variation where in one country such as Singapore, getting less than 5% of low-performing readers compared to the rest of other regions where they have more than 50% of their children are considered low-performing or low achiever. And if we look at that picture and replicate that in the end of secondary education, so that means 15-year-olds, grade 9 or grade 10 children, we can see that the same picture is actually very much apparent, where there's again a huge number of shares of children in Southeast Asia on average that can be considered low achieving. That means children who are graduating or exiting the basic education system without the necessary skills needed for them to be successful when they go and enter further academic learner, or whether they go to other pathways that they need to pursue in order to be successful in their respective lives. If you look at the 2024 National Progress Benchmark Report that was released by UIS this year, we can see that data gap still persists in Southeast Asia, where you have, for example, again, only Singapore showing strong progress in terms of achieving SDG Goal 4 indicators. And the rest of the countries in Southeast Asia are showing or having no data at all, or no data for trend. And so this particular finding is very much important, a call for action, not just among us in this room, but a call for action for governments to continue putting in mechanisms, monitoring systems that will help track progress over time in relation to global goals such as the UN SDG. And so my entry point to discussion, given all of that evidence that we're seeing from the region, what can we get and what can we learn from these data and from these findings? And so my contribution to discussion is really to leverage on international large-scale assessments and how we can get lessons in order to advance our work on basic education. So, of course, we know that any assessment or any evaluation system gives us a valid and reliable data that can help us measure and check whether our interventions are aligned with regional, national, and global goals in education. The ILSA, or the International Large Scale Assessment, also gives us a glimpse or highlights equity issues that matter, gender disparities, issues of disabilities of children, look at gaps between learning between and among schools, and many other equity issues that are very important for our policymakers. And finally, ILSA, or such as the CPLM program, helps us to contribute and track progress over time, looking at whether education systems are fulfilling its promise and whether different responses are working in a certain period of time. So my program, or our program at CMEO, is working at the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics, or the CPLM program. It's a regional large-scale learning assessment and capacity building program launched in 2012. We had our first cycle in 2019, and we're now in our second cycle, 2024. And the third cycle will happen in CPLM 2029, the last reporting a year before the SDG 2030 targets are achieved by countries. And so the CPLM is internationally recognized by UNESCO Institute of Statistics to report an SDG 4.1.1b, which is the minimum proficiency of levels of children hitting the minimum competency for reading and math, both for boys and girls. So looking at the 2019 findings, and this is just a year before the pandemic happened in 2020, evidence is very much clear where many of our countries are already experiencing huge learning crises. And this learning crisis did not happen just because of the pandemic, but pandemic exacerbated the problem, where it further left children behind in terms of learning progress. And if you look at this table, you can see that within this region, there's huge disparity where one education system, for example, achieving 82% of learning progress compared to 2% in comparison to another education system. And if we deep dive on that data and extract meaningful findings, what can we learn further from this data? We can see that in Southeast Asia, in CPLM 2019, there's huge disparities in also not just among countries, but also between gender, where girls are outperforming boys across all cognitive domains. And that gap becomes further wide when we increase the level of complexity of cognitive skills. And this is very unique in Southeast Asia because in other regions in the world, boys are outperforming girls in many of these domains. And this gender disparity is not just existent among boys and girls, but also disparities between and among students within different schools. So we looked at the characteristics of low-performing readers. Who are these students, and how can we make sense of their profile? And based on the analysis of logistic regression, we can see that those who are male, those who live in rural areas, those who don't speak the language of instruction at home and at school, those who belong to low SES, those who have household responsibilities inside home, and those who did not attend preschool. These children have greater chances or greater possibility of them becoming a low-performing reader. And if we lump this together with the socioeconomic status, or SES, which is a strong predictor of achievement, we can see that the gap further widens. And we did the analysis, we compare the highest quartile versus the low quartile, it gives you roughly 25% point gap between the high performing readers versus the low performing readers. And that gap becomes further wide as you increase the level of cognitive skills. And if you add these different multiple categories, such as living in rural area, you're a male, you do not speak the language of instruction at home, etc., you are being put in a multiple risk categories that increases the possibility of you becoming a low performing in many of education systems. And if you look at the other side of the coin, not just low performers, but also on the other side, the achievers, or what we call academically resilient, those who belong to the low SES, but exhibiting good performance in our assessments, we see that those children who have received extra reading support, those who have at least learned one language lesson per week, those who belong in a school who have libraries within their access tend to perform better compared to other children. And I would want to highlight this one because this is very important, especially from an equity lens, when you want to bridge the gap between and among schools in your country, where the issue is not just structural issues, but also other aspects, such as professional development. We see that, for example, in teacher professional development and training, it's not enough that they receive more than 60%, because in some education systems, it doesn't matter. What matters most is more of substance and more of the quality of the actual training that translates to improved learning outcomes inside school. If we look at teachers, teachers are a critical element of education improvement. And if we look at teachers, many of the education systems said that they're actually training their teachers. However, many of the teachers as well reported receiving no pre-service training at all. And majority of our teachers in 2019 assessment reported that they are teaching the subject that they didn't have any formal training at all in the first place. So that's a very critical finding that informs policy makers in terms of formulating an effective teacher policy. More than 10% of children were in a classroom with a grade 5 teacher in charge of reading who self-reported that many of them did not receive any training at all, specifically on reading instruction, where reading is a fundamental foundational skill for children to learn other skills inside the classroom. In terms of their pedagogical practice, many of them reported to have received professional development training, seminars, capacity building workshops. However, this varies within countries. For example, in most countries, teachers' responses revealed gaps in training on inclusive education, the use of ICT, and differentiated instruction in terms of using ICT or embedding ICT in their respective pedagogical practice. Also, teachers said that although they have received some sort of training, they're not even sure whether these training are effective in helping them strengthen their teaching strategies inside the classroom. In terms of teachers' condition in many of the countries in the region, we see that many students reported that their teachers are often late and absent. And this reason is not just, we know, not only unidimensional. We know that this reason is, this problem is multifaceted, that needs to be addressed in a multifaceted way. Many students also report not having 5 lessons of language and mathematics. So again, this is an issue of coming up with an effective instructional strategy of whether your program is actually working in targeting gaps and providing sufficient language lessons or any other intervention for that matter. In terms of social dimensions and in the environment where children are actually going to schools, we see that those schools who have, those children who have exhibited positive feelings towards their school. That means children who feel safe, the children who feel that their schools can be considered as a safe space for them to learn. These children tend to perform better compared to children who are in schools who feel bullied. Those children who feel that they are being discriminated or alienated in many other reasons that we know. So we see that making schools a safe space and schools as a secondary home for children matters in terms of policy making, making sure that they learn in school. So as I end, and I have 20 seconds in my time, just giving you a glimpse of the broader regional policy pointers that we have in CPLM, and it ranges from prioritizing, making sure that your curriculum is responsive to the needs of your education system, up until setting up monitoring and evaluation systems that can help you track progress over time. And this is very critical because when we look at policy implementation, we're not just looking at one particular period. We're looking at longitudinal effect of our policy response the moment you implement a particular intervention to address a particular problem. So the policy pointers here presented by CPLM helps countries or informs countries in terms of giving them strong thematic areas of where they can actually get and provide intervention in order to address our shared problems. And finally, I just want to give you the regional priorities for action, which was formulated by senior member countries last year when we did our regional steering committee in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and where many of the CPLM countries gathered together and identified key thematic areas in order to accelerate the learning process. Because we know that the pandemic further exacerbated the learning crisis. So many countries identified key thematic areas where they think they can actually come in and formulate interventions in order to advance foundational skills in the region. And that's all from my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ibanez. So much rich data. I think we could easily spend here another 2 sessions at least to go through all of the data that has been collected and the insights that it provides. So if you haven't yet, I warmly invite you to go look at the reports and to be expecting soon to have the 24 report to be able to make the comparison to how we have evolved over these past years. It's really clear that monitoring learning progress is a complex matter. It is not evident and can often lead to data gaps if not done correctly. So having these tools that provide international or regional assessments is really beneficial for the governments, for the ministries of education to really plan for state system-wide measures and actions. And also, I think you've illustrated very nicely throughout the presentation, it is a vast combination of factors that contribute to success or failure within the education system. So having this rich data and taking the time to analyze it is really key. With that, we move to our last presentation. So this presentation, unfortunately, our third panelist could not be here with us today, but has sent in a video recording that we will be watching together. Mr. Koji Miyamoto is a senior economist with the World Bank. He works with the Education Global Practice, where he covers education sector operations in Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines. He specializes in advancing skills development policies and designing learning assessments. So with his presentation, we will dive further into the world of international large-scale assessments. His presentation is titled "The Power of Large-Scale Adult Skills Assessments to Monitor, Improve, and Ensure Quality of Education and Training Systems." So please join me in watching his pre-recording.
Good afternoon. My name is Koji Miyamoto. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank's Education Global Practice. I specialize in education and training policies, program design, and assessments of learning outcomes. It is a great honor to have this chance to contribute to a discussion on quality assurance as part of the ongoing efforts to improve outcomes of lifelong learning. As you can see from the title, my presentation will focus on the powers of large-scale adult skills assessments to improve the ways in which we monitor and ensure the quality of our learning systems. I would like to start my presentation by explaining what may be quite obvious to many of you. What do we mean by large-scale skills assessments? I think it's very important to clarify the key features of large-scale skills assessments in order to better understand the benefits and power of these tools. Large-scale skills assessments provide an evaluation of the individual's abilities across a range of skills, which typically include cognitive skills, such as reading literacy, as well as social emotional skills, such as emotional resilience. You may be quite familiar with international skills assessments, such as PISA, CPLM, and TIMSS, all of which often keeps the newspapers quite busy when their results are launched. This slide gives you a bird's eye view of the landscape of selected international large-scale skills assessments, ordered by stages of the individual's life cycle, starting from early childhood, youth, and then adulthood. You can see that there are many assessments that are concentrated during the basic education period, while there are not so many of those assessments around youth and adulthood, during which lifelong learning often takes place. But there are two good examples of large-scale adult skills assessments delivered internationally, notably the OECD's PIAC survey and the World Bank's STEP household survey. What are the key characteristics of large-scale skills assessments? First, they can be delivered to a broad population group, such as around the entire country, region, or provinces. It can also be delivered to education training institutions, such as secondary schools or universities. Second, large-scale skills assessments measure skills that are considered indispensable for individuals to cope and thrive in the labor market and society. This gives an example of the kind of skills that large-scale assessments measure. The list comes from the survey by the World Economic Forum, delivered to a large number of firms around the world, including Thailand. You can see that skills that firms look out for include a range of cognitive abilities, social and emotional abilities, as well as digital skills. The third characteristic of large-scale skills assessments is that they are scaled in terms of proficiency, which depicts what individuals can do instead of what they know. This is an important point, as most of our education training systems are shifting towards competency-based education training approaches. This is a typical example of proficiency scales for reading literacy that can be applied to youth and adults. For instance, those with high literacy proficiency have the ability to make complex inferences from a text and apply background knowledge as well as interpretations to make sense of a text that may have conflicting information. On the other hand, those with low proficiency levels can barely read and understand short text that we find in advertisements, for instance, to locate a single piece of information, such as the price of a mobile phone that meets one's needs. And the fourth characteristics of large-scale skills assessments is that they also measure possible drivers of learning outcomes, such as teachers' quality, as well as possible long-term impact of skills, such as income or health conditions. Many large-scale international assessments measure such potential drivers of learning outcomes, such as school climate in secondary schools, or training experience on the job, and show how these measures are associated with skills proficiency. Another very important characteristic of the large-scale skills assessments is that they are designed to allow for internationally comparable metrics of skills proficiency. You may be very familiar with a figure like this, which presents cross-country comparisons of the proportion of low performers in PISA 2022. Lastly, when it comes to large-scale skills assessments for adults, a very important characteristic is that they measure the outcomes of the entire cycle of skills development that individuals experience. Therefore, the measures of skills represent how the entire ecosystem of skills development has responded to the skill needs of the labor market and the society. Let's move to the second part of my presentation. In this section, I will argue that large-scale adult skills assessments can be very powerful in helping policymakers and practitioners improve and ensure quality of lifelong learning. The power of large-scale adult skills assessment comes from its ability to highlight the state of the play in terms of where countries and education institutions stand in terms of learning outcomes. The power of large-scale adult skills assessment also comes from its ability to provide action plans to respond to any skill shortages or mismatches that may be happening. Large-scale adult skills assessment can also be extremely useful to monitor progress in responding to the action plans. Let me give you an example of the state of the play in terms of the proportion of youth and adults in the case of the United States that have acquired foundational skills. This data, which comes from the OECD's PIAAC, shows that approximately 20 to 30% of youth and adults in the US were not able to perform basic proficiency in reading, numeracy, and problem-solving skills. For instance, 2 out of 10 youth and adults were not able to read a basic information sheet to locate a congressperson's name. Once the large-scale assessments point to the skills gap or other challenges that are related to learning outcomes, they provide an opportunity to diagnose the reasons why there is this problem. This is an example of the diagnosis and action plans prepared based on the results from a large-scale adult skills assessment for Ireland, which was presented in the OECD's Skills Strategy for Ireland. In this case, the diagnosis focused on how the education and training system can better respond to the underlying skills gaps that Ireland has been facing through improving lifelong learning. This is just to illustrate what kind of diagnostics can be prepared after the diagnostic. So I will not go into the details of the proposal that you can see here. Once the evidence-based action plans have been drawn, it will obviously be up to the countries or educational institutions to take actions. Large-scale skills assessments can be used repeatedly to see if and how countries or institutions are making progress in responding to the skills gaps or the skills crisis. Let me give you an example of how this was done using PISA. Many of you may already know that Poland is one of the major reformers in education and that they have managed to significantly improve learning outcomes through extensive reforms which started around the end of the last century. Poland used large-scale skills assessments, i.e. PISA, to evaluate their progress made in the package of major reforms in the curriculum, assessments, teachers' preparation, and career promotion systems, to name a few. You can see that the reform efforts coincided with significant gains in PISA's reading performance overall. The reform started around 1999, just before this PISA was delivered in 2000. So it is interesting to see the spike in the performance after the reform. Let me move to the section 3. In this section, I would like to offer 2 examples of leveraging large-scale adult skills assessment. One of the examples is based on a very recent nationwide assessment that we delivered together with the EEF in Thailand, as well as the institution-based large-scale adult skills assessment that a Canadian quality assurance agency conducted several years ago. First, let me talk about the adult skills assessment in Thailand, which was the first large-scale adult skills assessment administered in Thailand. with the EEF, we prepared an assessment of reading literacy that was anchored on the OECD's PIAAC proficiency scale, as well as a separate assessment of digital and social and emotional skills. The objective of this assessment was to understand the degree of skill gaps across diverse population groups in Thailand and also across geographical areas. The results from the adult skills assessment in Thailand was quite shocking. We found that over 2/3 of youth adults in Thailand did not have the baseline basic reading literacy skills, such as understanding how to react, how to read, understand, and react to medical instructions. Moreover, we found that over three quarters of youth and adults did not have the baseline digital skills, such as the capacity to choose a suitable mobile phone plan on the internet. Not surprisingly, we also found that even larger proportion of those who lived in rural areas and the older age populations were facing skill shortages. You can see these very high figures of those who performed below the threshold level of foundational literacy and digital skills. And even among the younger generations, i.e. those below age 40, over 60% did not have the baseline levels of reading literacy. We also estimated the economic costs of the skills shortages or the skills crisis, which could amount to up to 20% of Thailand's GDP in 2022. And that amount was actually equivalent to its national budget. This finding of the magnitude of these skills shortages led to an extensive review of the Thailand's education and training policies and programs to locate the weaknesses in the system. So this is the framework that we used to understand where the weaknesses were. So we reviewed the extent to which there were policy intent in education and training to address foundational skills. We also looked at the government's actions, different elements of government actions that have been taken. For example, the government providing instruments to promote foundational skill development. And this led to the proposed policy recommendations or action plans, which include suggestions to improve the quality assurance models. So our suggestions to strengthen quality assurance include strengthening teachers' professional development to improve their capacity to improve learners' social and emotional skills as well as digital skills. It also suggested improvements in the teachers' certification and recertification requirements so that we can encourage teachers to further develop their appropriate pedagogical skills to foster learners' foundational digital skills and social and emotional skills. Now, let me move on to the second example, which comes from a study by the Canadian Provincial Educational Quality Assurance Agency, called the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario, HECO. The study is based on a large-scale adult skills assessment, which is essentially OECD's PIAAC Online, that was applied to 4,630 first and final year students in 20 selected higher education institutions in the Ontario province. The purpose of this assessment was to A, measure students' proficiency in reading literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving skills. Another objective was to compare students' proficiency with those from comparable group from other countries, also within Canada as well. And then another objective, the final objective, was to make inferences on whether students' proficiency have improved through higher education. Here are the results. These figures represent the proficiency scores in literacy. The dark blue bar on the left-hand side represents figures for the first-year students in the 20 participating higher education institutions in Ontario, compared with the average scores of comparator students from the OECD, as well as in Canada, also within Ontario as well. The dark blue figure on the right-hand side represents figures for the final year students. Again, compared with the average scores of comparator students from the OECD countries, as well as Canada and other higher education students in Ontario. You can see that on average, students from participating higher education institutions in Ontario performed quite well compared to comparable students across OECD and Canada. You can also see that the final year students' performance improved slightly compared to the first year students, which may not come as a surprise. This figure presents the proportion of students at each of the proficiency levels. Note that level 3 is considered to be the minimum level of skills that youth and adults should be at in order to cope and thrive in the 21st century labor market and society. This figure suggests that approximately 25% of students in the 20 participating higher education institutions in Ontario perform below this baseline level. As expected, there's a moderate improvement in proficiency performance when you compare the first year students and the final year students. These figures show the literacy performance by different length of higher education programs. The light blue line is for 2 years college, the dark blue is for 3 years, and the light purple is for 4 years bachelor's program. While the left-hand side figure, which shows results for the first year students, shows moderate differences in the proficiency between students from different program length, the right-hand side figure, which shows results for the final year students, show large differences in the proficiency performance, especially for 4 years bachelor program. So they're performing very well compared to the program with shorter length. Lastly, these two figures represent literacy performance by gender for the first year and last year students. The interesting finding is that while there were no gender differences in literacy performance for the first year students, there's a notable difference in the literacy performance among final year students. You can see that in a final year female students generally perform much better than final year male students. This may imply that female students in the 20 selected higher education institutions in Ontario were benefiting more from higher education compared to male students, at least in terms of improving reading literacy skills. Finally, this study also provides diagnosis and recommendations to improve the development of proficiencies. Although the evidence I have presented so far focused on results from the reading literacy assessment, I'm showing the recommendation they made for improving numeracy skills. These recommendations provided very clear guidance on ways to improve teaching and learning to raise students' numeracy skills, such as designating a numeracy leads among higher education faculty members who can engage in information sharing and facilitate community practices. It also suggests that the usefulness of creating a repository of numeracy modules. Other suggestions include introducing professional development opportunities for teachers, administrators, and policymakers to encourage collaboration and cross-sectoral learning. And this brings me to the conclusion and final reflections of the presentation. First, I hope that I have managed to convince you that large-scale adult skills assessments are a valuable tool to monitor, improve, and ensure quality of lifelong learning. However, I should note one of the limitations of these assessments, which is that it does not measure all the skills that we care about. Nevertheless, it does include some of the most important skills, such as literacy, digital skills, and social and emotional skills. And these skills are highly relevant across occupations and life settings. And that's why we call these skills transversal skills and foundational skills. Second, I would like to reiterate that one of the most important strengths of mobilizing international large-scale assessments is that they enable cross-national comparisons of skills proficiencies. This will allow countries and education institutions to compare their performance against international benchmarks of quality standards or learning outcomes. This provides a unique opportunity to identify the severity of the learning challenges that countries and educational institutions need to address. It also provides a unique opportunity to learn from successful reformers and also effectively monitor progress in improving policies and programs designed to address the learning challenges. Third, there is abundant evidence suggesting that there are considerable skills gaps among youth and adults in many countries in the East Asia and Pacific region. Yet only very few countries have delivered large-scale adult skills assessments and use its information to explore reforms. It is very encouraging to see many countries mobilizing large-scale skill assessments for students, like PISA, and using that to improve quality learning. Large-scale adult skills assessment offers similar benefits to improve the quality of lifelong learning and its learning outcomes as well. I believe we have managed to demonstrate this in Thailand very recently, together with the EEF. And we now have to repeat this assessment for monitoring and evaluation and quality assurance. I sincerely hope other countries in the region may consider taking a similar approach to improve the quality of the lifelong learning and the entire education and training system in their country. Thank you very much.
Thank you also to the final presentation by Mr. Miyamoto. He really called out for an adoption of these large-scale assessments due to their value. I think it was also very clear that it can be quite confronting to see the results of these assessments, but that state of play, as called by Mr. Miyamoto, that identification of where you stand within your education system is really very powerful. Although confronting, it's very powerful. It allows you to take the measures that are necessary from an equity perspective. It's also nice to see those strong examples of Poland's case study, for example, that clearly show that deliberate action makes clear improvements and clear transformation within the education system. Okay, so we now have 10 minutes left to have a rich discussion with all of this information that was shared, all of these insights, abundance of data. The floor is yours to engage in a Q&A with our presenters. Do we have questions from the audience here before I dive into the... Yes, please do.
Hello. I have a question for, sorry, I'm not going to pronounce your name wrong. For, what is it? Bagus. Okay. So my question is, how does Prakarja program make sure the training is accessible for people in remote areas and available for community, especially in many different skills being provided? And also, does Prakarja offer training opportunity for people living in the camps or similar settings?
I don't hear the last sentence.
So does Prakarja offers training opportunity for people living in the refugee camps or similar setting?
I can answer that. Thank you. So to begin with, thank you. Remember your name is Miss Siti? Nurhayati. Nurhayati. Sorry, Miss Nurhayati. So that's very nice questions. So with the remote areas, first let me begin that Prakarja have spectrum of training that's online, offline, LMS, so whichever that suit best. So with our last survey last year, in fact, participants or beneficiaries prefer to have more more flexible, because offline, that means that you have to come on a certain day, certain time, then you have to travel. But again, because it's like adaptive to users' needs. So the most popular is that online and LMS. With this technology, you see that Indonesia is very diverse, but many places you can access through using internet. At least if you cannot use from your home, you can go to the village office, head of the village office, have the district office. You can have the data package from that for free. So that's how this make them flexible for them to have access. And then with the skills, so the skill, because it has more than 1,200 subjects, so you can choose whichever. Again, with this, there are some subject is, you see, between one training providers, with the others might be the same subject, might be slightly different syllabus, but that is also possible because they have some flexibility. So participants, they can choose whichever that suit to them, the time, the providers, etc. With the refugees, I need to check, but then again, because this is mainly for, as long as that this got eligible being Indonesian, age 18 to 64, then they should be able to have access. But I need to check with that, because that might be interesting with that, because the government mandate this for the Indonesian. So maybe that's if they have a kind of a KIP, that's like resident card that's supposed to be able to have access. But I need to check. I can email you if you can give me email. Yeah, I can check that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I actually have a question for Mr. Ibanez. So we know that 2024, this year, there's going to be a new measurement. I also understood that there's going to be an expansion into 21st century skills. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what can be expected in the new measurement as opposed to the measurement that was done the previous years?
Right. Great question, Carolina. For this year, we're currently doing the main survey. And we did a lot of recalibrations So many innovations. One is in terms of methodological adjustment, because the first cycle happened in 2019. So we're more or less doing the baseline in terms of scaling both for proficiency levels in reading, writing, and math. And so when we do the main survey in 2024 and get the data in 2025, then that helps us adjust the technical scaling process for all the proficiency levels. So that helps us fill the gaps in terms of making sure that our proficiency scales are adaptive and responsive to the spread of abilities across countries in Southeast Asia. So that's one major innovation that we can expect from the second cycle. Second is on the expansion of global citizenship, because we know that in the first cycle there was a clear priority in highlighting global citizenship, and that was pre-pandemic context. Now, when the pandemic happened, many constructs emerged based on different policy priorities. So, for example, we were able to include skills such as resilience, which is a critical, important skill right now in the or in the post-pandemic context. Countries are also looking at putting in areas where they also invested so much, such as effectiveness of digital transformation. Many countries have shifted their learning delivery into using online technologies in order to advance and reach further children in their educational delivery. So those are the skills that are emerging. So we've expanded the scope of contextual questionnaires. That means making sure that our constructs assessment would respond to policy priorities of our countries. So I think that's also one innovation that we can expect from 2024. And finally, we can look at progress over time. So if the 2025 data comes out, we can look at trajectory of performance from pre-pandemic versus the post-pandemic. So that comparative lens can help us gauge whether learning recoveries are actually working or whether there are more areas that needs further attention in terms of policy response. So those are the three things that are on top of mind, I think. And of course, continuously engaging our Southeast Asian countries to be involved on the survey. So in the first cycle, we have 6 countries. In the first cycle, 6 countries. Second cycle, 7 countries. So we're going to continue to expect countries to be more involved in the survey so that we can have at least a clear picture of our performance before the 2030 targets of UNSDG.
Fabulous. Sounds really exciting. Looking forward to see that report indeed. Do we have any other final questions? We're almost out of time. Yes, please.
A reflection and maybe to underline also and I'm pretty sure that you have used also this instrument of tracking graduates and we've seen that there are positive developments when also the providers are being encouraged, be it school or be it adult learning providers are being encouraged to follow up with their graduates and to see the results in 1 year after or 2 years after and then to have this kind of improvement already at the provider level and faster. So that would be one reflection, and that would be really a very complementary solution to also this the large-scale skills assessment surveys that are very useful also to fill in the informational gaps when it comes to certain systems that are not yet investing sufficiently in monitoring and evaluation. The second point also from our experience is, and I think this is an effort of the international community as well that has to be put there, we often see this fragile context. Education and training is being delivered in fragile context for fragile groups, like you mentioned already, the migrant camps and so on. And I feel that sometimes the solutions, the technical solutions, the instruments we have available are not always reflecting the exact situation there. I'm talking about context when you don't have even the basics to construct, for example, control group information and so on. And also I think there is an important input here because we need also to convince policymakers that certain measures work in certain conditions, and maybe when it comes to impact assessment, we should not only look at employment outcomes, we should also look at other aspects. But the instruments that are currently available, maybe they're not fully developed in this for this context. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to respond to that? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for uh, the first one with the follow-up to graduate. Yes, I can share with the experience of Prakerja. Prakerja follow up the graduate, but maybe the one that after certain months after they complete it, we follow. But then after that, to follow that for maybe 5 years after that, maybe we need to do that. That might be good input. But then for for fragile context, but at least what I know for sure, it is for the people with disabilities, people in remote areas. That is, again, the Prakerja graduates, 3% of them are people with disabilities. But again, it is not perfect. For instance, for the sight disability, we can provide with physical disability, we can provide. But for the hearing issues, because not all the platform has the sign language interpreting, maybe that's not yet been able to accommodate, because again, the training providers also, because the training has, compensation for the training providers in the very efficient manner. Yeah, maybe that how to deal with that. Maybe that's another challenge for all of us, because how we can provide efficient training, but that can provide that. We were joking, can we have, kind of, maybe in the near future we speak in Bahasa Indonesia, will be AI that can transfer this into, what is it, the sign language. Maybe that might be innovation to our accommodate that kind of things. But if it is not serious disability, so I guess that can be accommodated so far. And our survey also proved that people with disabilities really do get help. They don't have to move from their home. Yeah, they can stay at their home. They can have the access. They can also show their, because there are also tests, they can join the test. Because by technology now, for people with sight versus disability, they have the talkback tools like from mobile phone, that not an issue. Yeah, but then for other disabilities, maybe that still. But for like the one that being you both asked, like in the Vigicam, that might be again because Prakerja did not provide that tools. Yeah, because they are provided only if you are eligible to do that. Yeah, you have to register. And again, maybe I need to give the idea with you that Prakerja is very competitive training. That means not everyone want to register. They can have access at the same period they want. They have to fill the registration. Once then they have to, once they are eligible administratively, then they go to the pool of the registered applicant. But then they can apply which training topic they want to join, and then which state they want to join. If they are, with that, Prakerja have the randomization score, and then when they are selected, yeah, then they can join. So it's about 15 to 20% of the applicant can join the batch. So after that, if they cannot manage to get this, they can apply for the next round, next batch, etc. So this give the fairness. So that's also why people in the remote area can get it, because they have some randomization. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end. I want to thank everyone for your participation, the panelists for the presentations. I want to leave us off with an image of quality assurance and robust data are really not the cherry on the pie. They are baked into the pie to give the pie structure and to determine what the other ingredients need to be inside the pie so that when you eat the pie, it actually hits the right spot. So thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ms. Roskowska as well. Shall we have a group photo, please? And you just make me hungry, the pie. But I think it's a great time because right after this, we're going to have around 20, 30-minute break. We will be back to this room, resume our